Hey, good evening. Storm Tracker 16 meteorologist John Hickey with you. It is Monday night at, what do we got? Get the alerts off my phone, 9:26. Thank you very much for tuning in here, tracking our storm system that's making its way through as I gaze out our weather office window here. See that we've changed that rain over to snow, but another quick check to our thermometer shows 34 degrees. So not sticking just yet where we are, but it is sticking for some of you, especially as you go up in elevation. Actually heard from our friend of the show there, Tim Siemens. He's up on Music Mountain at 645. When he got to elevations around 2,000 feet, it was already starting to stick. So we'll watch as that, what we call the snow level. So that's going to start to drop here. Where it's sticking, the snow level, that's going to continue to drop here tonight. So we expect some of us here over the next couple of hours to start to see the snow stick at least to the grass. And again, for those of you on some of those mountaintops, it will start to stick to the roadways too. Without further ado, let's jump to the maps. Just want to show you a few things here. This is our snowfall map. We'll jump back to this from time to time throughout this live event here on Facebook and YouTube and our WNEP app, just in case folks are jumping in and out. Watching some of the latest numbers roll through, and I think we're really in good shape here. This is once again an elevation-dependent storm. It's a Pocono special. We're thinking about 4 to 8 inches of snow should do it for you. Now, sure, will someone come away with 9 or 10? Yeah, absolutely, on some of those elevations. The Pleasant Mountains, the Forest Cities, the Starlights, the Equinox, and those of you at elevations above 2,000 feet. There's not a lot of you, but there are a few, and that's where we may find some of those highest end totals. Maybe closer to 9 or 10 inches. But most of you in the Poconos likely fall within about 4 to 8. The trickier call is once you get into Lackawanna County and down towards the Valley cities. You know, we're going to be struggling to drop much below freezing here tonight. And, as I'll show you here in a moment, the snow may actually taper off for a little while. So when we'd probably have our best chance for it to really stick, now we're talking the valleys. Pocono's a different ballgame, but for the valleys, at about the time when it's going to be at its coldest, when you'd think things would be sticking, I think that's when things are going to be tapering off a little bit. So it's going to be kind of the race against time. How quickly does a heavier batch of snow move in tomorrow to get some stuff to start sticking in the valleys? So for the time being, our valley cities, we're thinking somewhere around a trace or coating to 2 inches of snow for our valleys. I know Scranton on this map is in Old Forge and Taylor and etc. are in 2 to 5, but if you heard Kurt earlier and then you heard myself on 7 o'clock news on WNEP, we're pushing the lower end totals for the valleys. Now, you don't have to go far outside of the valleys to see those numbers come up. So, I mean, we saw it even on Friday night into early Saturday morning. You know, downtown Scranton, nothing, zilch. It snowed, but it didn't stick. Meanwhile, you went up to Lake Scranton, and there was an inch or two of snow up there. Go higher still, Daleville, Mount Cobb, and the numbers went up further. And then by the time you got to Mount Pocono and Tobyhanna and Gouldsboro, that's where we saw some of our highest totals. So, again, as we like to say, location, location, location in a very elevation-dependent storm. If you're watching in central Pennsylvania, really not a lot happening. If you're going to find any accumulation, it's going to happen tonight. As the coastal aspect of the storm takes over, it's going to be more of an eastern Pennsylvania event, and those of you in central Pennsylvania will be missed. It's kind of interesting that we've got a, sizable system, at least as it appears in a weather map, on the 6-year anniversary of the Pi Day storm of 2017. Interesting how weather likes to do this. So I want to show you just a couple of a quick look at some camera views. So this is the Pottsville map. Doesn't look like much is going on there. We'll take you up to Blue Mountain. Looks like there may be some flakes flying. And then we showed you this at the beginning of this broadcast, our roof camera. You can see the flakes coming, but again, not sticking yet. Temperature still a little bit too warm. We're running about 34 degrees. At least for the time being, but we expect that number to drop a little bit tonight. Let's show you what the storm looks like on satellite and radar, shall we? And here's kind of a close-up view, and you can see not a lot happening for a lot of you in central Pennsylvania. Trip along 80, basically once you get much west of Hazleton, not much going on, maybe some patchy mist drizzle or a stray snowflake, but a lot of the action right now is mainly confined up across northeastern areas. So probably snowing pretty good up through the elevations, out through the Poconos, out into Pike County. I'm hearing some reports there. It's probably starting to stick a little bit. Pocono Plateau, you've got some snow coming down and sticking. Our valleys, it is mainly rain at this point, mixing with wet snowflakes, same as you kind of go out Route 6. Kind of a rain-snow mix is what we're at least seeing on radar. Of course, you can always comment with what you've got going on where you are. Susquehanna County looks like mainly snow for you or a rain-snow mix. Again, very elevation dependent. Here's kind of a wide-angle view. Let me back this up one slide so you can get the view of it here. I'll bump you up there. So it's what we call a kind of two areas of low pressure that we're watching right now. We've got storm energy, this upper level low out over Ohio. And then we've got the actual coastal low itself. So there's your upper level energy. And this is your coastal low. Look how far off to the south and east this thing is. So, you know, just not that long ago, some of our guidance had this in a lot closer to the coast. And if that had, you know, played out, we'd be looking at a real good one for a lot of us, but it's just not really in the cards. Yes, some of you in the Poconos come away with some, you know, significant snow, but certainly not a blockbuster storm. But what we're going to notice here, I'll show you another kind of slide as we call them. You're going to see kind of how this axis of real heavy snow is going to end up setting up mostly over western New England and up into New York State. The Catskills should see a good bit of snow out of this, and it's going to be because of how those two areas of low pressure kind of play together. So here's a wide angle view, okay? So this map is current. This is 9:30 at night, right? And you can kind of see how this this low has kind of like this axis that kind of extends up from it here. So in the world of weather, this is known as an inverted trough. It's a kind of a fancy way of saying this is where we've got kind of winds kind of coming together and making it so that you get some really intense snowfall rates. But it's going to follow, those intense snowfall rates are going to follow where this inverted trough goes. So let's take you kind of through the overnight. Notice, and we're going to do a close-up view of this too. It's the best part about these lives. It's unlimited time for this guy. So we've got you covered. We'll give you some real nitty-gritty detail that you're probably not going to get on TV. So I want you to follow this axis, this inverted trough, if you will. Notice where you get some of those real dark colors across New York State into western Massachusetts, into southern Vermont. This is going to be where the heaviest snow is going to fall. We're going to be on the fringe of that heaviest snow. And that's going to happen as this inverted trough kind of pivots. See how it was more, you know, probably running northwest, southeast. Well, now it's kind of running closer to east to west. So this is when the snow is going to start to pick up in our neck of the woods. So this is 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Let's take you up to about lunchtime. And again, this is probably when some decent snowfall rates are happening. But again, by noon tomorrow, it's March. It's the middle of March. The sun angle is getting higher in the sky. There's not a lot of cold air for this to work with. So this is what I was kind of mentioning earlier, that race against time. Snow tapers off for a while tonight. And then as this heavier batch of snow tries to rotate in, it's that race against time, because as that sun angle gets higher in the sky, it gets harder for the snow to stick. Again, especially in the valleys where we're going to be kind of borderline for it to snow, 33, 34 degrees. Those of you in the elevations, yeah, sure, it's going to be a little bit colder. We'll have an easier time sticking, and not just to untreated surfaces, but probably to the treated ones too. But for our valleys, it's looking more and more like this is going to be mainly just kind of a wet roadway thing. Not necessarily a bad thing, of course, for travel. It's just kind of how this whole thing is going to play out. So this low is going to kind of hang out over eastern Massachusetts for a while on Tuesday, and then it's going to finally shift east and give us a reprieve from the snow. Wednesday looks a lot better. But see how these lines are really close together? Called isobars. And when those lines of constant pressure are really close together, that means that it's getting awfully windy. So we expect some very windy conditions starting tomorrow, lasting into the day on Wednesday. Here's a closer up view. And what I like about this future clouds and radar model that we're looking at, it's the newest run of it, or the latest example of it, of what you can expect. So it's the most up-to-date information. Again, take you up to midnight. The steadiest snow mainly out through the Poconos, and not a lot happening for those of you in central Pennsylvania. And then watch as we go into tomorrow morning. So here's 4 o'clock. Let's bump you up to about 7. So that heavier axis of snow just starting to try to pivot back in. Okay, and this is right around sunrise. So the snow's coming down, probably at a reasonable rate, maybe some ½ inch to up to an inch an hour. Inch-an-hour snows would be up through the northern tier in the Poconos, not so much for the valley cities. And then we take you up to about 11. So yeah, it's snowing at this point, but you can see some of the lighter shades throughout our valley cities. So probably some lighter snow there, but still pretty heavy out through the Poconos and our northern tier up through the Endless Mountains, and cold enough too that it's going to be sticking there. And same goes into the early afternoon. So up through far northern Wayne County, you can see some of those real dark colors popping up there in the Equinox, the Starucas. So it's snowing hard for you, probably up by Milford, Dingman's Ferry, Lord's Valley, Greentown even, probably getting into some pretty heavy snow. Tafton, probably looking at some reasonably heavy snow. Greeley, some reasonably heavy snow for tomorrow afternoon. And then this will all be kind of tapering off for tomorrow night. I want to show you the snowfall map again because I know people kind of jump in and out of these things. So if you are just joining us, thank you so much. Thanks for taking a little time out of your Monday evening to do that. We've got about 4 to 8 inches of snow is what we're thinking for a lot of the Poconos up into the Endless Mountains. There could be, again, the highest elevations above 2,000 feet. A few examples of maybe 9 or 10 inches of snow, but that's more of an exception and not the rule. We're thinking a lot of you in the Poconos come in that 4 to 8 inch range, and as you go up in elevation, you can anticipate some of those higher totals. So up along the Pocono Plateau, you're closer to 6, 7, and 8, whereas if you're down in maybe some of the valleys up in the northern tier, maybe you're a little bit closer to 4 or 5 inches of snow. Valley cities remain a tougher call, but we're leaning on the lower end. Okay, generally just a coating to 2 inches in our valleys, but you get just outside of the valleys, you go up towards Falls, you go up into Newton Ransom, you go up towards Lake Scranton, into Springbrook Township. Those numbers quickly jump closer to 4 or 5 inches of snow as compared to being down in the valley when you're closer to just a coating to 2 inches of snow. And then for those of you out in central Pennsylvania, really not a lot happening for you out of this storm, unfortunately. If you're a snow lover, I say unfortunately. If you're not a snow lover, well, you once again kind of luck out. The other aspect to the storm, it's going to be the wind. It's going to be really windy tomorrow. And that is not a good combination for those of you in the Poconos where you've got, decent amount of snow coming your way, depending on your elevation, up to like 8 inches of snow. And it's going to be very windy. Look at these wind gusts, 45, 50 miles an hour from the northwest tomorrow afternoon. That's moving right along. All right, so going to have to be mindful of the potential for some power outages as a result of that. I've got us labeled in a high risk for power outages, but again, this is going to be very elevation sensitive. Not going to be as much of a problem for the valleys. I'm not saying it's zero, but it just looks like as you go up in elevation, you've got more snow, so there's heavier snow loading on some of our power lines, gusts of wind to 50 miles an hour. That's usually a recipe to create some power outages. So where we find more snow, where we find the highest winds, that combination of the two, that's likely going to lead to a pretty significant power outage risk for this. So just something to be mindful of. And I mentioned this, it's going to continue to be windy into Wednesday too. Probably closer to like 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts on Wednesday, whereas tomorrow, Tuesday, those gusts 35 to as high as about 50 miles per hour. So let's wrap this thing up. Let's give you the timeline, we'll show you the totals, and then we'll send you on your way here tonight. And hopefully you'll still be able to join us for your latest news in sports of the day too, tonight at 10 and 11, 10 on WNEP 2, 11 on WNEP. So we're finding that the rain is changing over to snow here tonight. Again, looking out our weather office window, seeing some flakes starting to fall. Heaviest snow starts to fall really overnight, closer to daybreak tomorrow, and then continue through tomorrow morning. I think there's going to still be some pockets of some heavier snow in the Poconos even into tomorrow afternoon, but it's going to be very elevation sensitive for it to stick, okay? Because in the valleys, it's just going to be just a little too warm for it to really be much of an issue. But the mountains, yeah, for sure. It's going to be snow covered and slick, but our valley roads mainly just wet for tomorrow. Now the snow is going to be officially tapering off tomorrow night. It's windy tomorrow, and again, it will be windy into Wednesday too. Last check on your snowfall totals map before we say see you later for the night, at least for this live broadcast. Poconos, you're the breadwinner out of this one. About 4 to 8 inches of snow is what we're thinking. Again, the highest elevations, and there are a few of you over 2,000 feet, you could push 9 or 10 inches. But for the most part, 4 to 8 looks reasonable. And you get outside of that, and things quickly taper from 4 to 8 down to like just a couple of inches. And then you go down to hardly anything once you get down, once you get closer to Wilkes-Barre, those numbers really taper off. Hazleton's probably closer to a few inches of snow, maybe 3, 4, something like that. Some of the elevations down into Carbon County, again, you'll be on some of the higher totals there. Same for you, again, Monroe County, some of the Pocono Resort should do pretty well out of this. And then you get up into Honesdale. Lackawaxen should actually do pretty well out of this too. Some decent elevation there, probably around a half a foot of snow. And again, it's going to be that heavy, wet, pasty snow, sticks to everything. So when you get the wind on top of that, it could be the recipe for some power outages. So latest data just coming in. I'm going to be looking over that as well as some of the latest observations that we're getting. This time of year starts to get a little tough. Because we've pushed the clocks ahead 1 hour, it also means that our weather data starts to trickle in an hour later than it did just last week. In fact, just as recently as Saturday. So we're not getting the look at as much as we would for the 10 and 11 as we were just a couple of days ago. So we'll kind of be looking at whatever's trickling in before the 10 and whatever else I can get a gander at before the 11. See where we stand with the latest data, compare it to what we're seeing happen, play out in real time, and update the forecast if necessary as we go. But feeling pretty good about our map here, I will say that. So thanks a lot for tuning into this. Be safe out there. Again, if you got to prepare for power outages, hopefully you'll be able to weather that. But you should also know that the end of this week is going to be very warm. We've got highs by the end of the week into the low 50s. So that's the thing with March storms. They're in, and then once they leave, temperatures are usually pretty quick to rise too. So thanks again for tuning into this live broadcast. We'll see you tonight at 10 and 11, WNEP2 and WNEP. Take care. Have a good night.